Hi, as you know, I'm Jackie, and I'm doing my presentation on poverty, counseling, and poverty. My article is entitled In-Home Counseling for Young Children Living in Poverty, an Exploration of Counseling Competencies. Over time, I've noticed that I've unwittingly become socioeconomically biased, which is very ironic considering I don't come from wealth, nor have I ever acquired any wealth. In fact, quite the opposite. I've mostly lived in or below the poverty level most of my life. Kind of a beer budget, champagne taste kind of thing. Since becoming aware of it, I'm working hard to overcome this bias. Choosing this topic is one small step toward that goal. Additionally, I've come across many career opportunities for in-home counseling. As you may have guessed, and I have been hesitant and quite resistant to pursue such employment due to many factors listed in this article, which will be discussed later. I wanted to know more about this field, so here we go. This article looked at the saliency of in-home counseling for poverty-stricken young children. It further explored the necessary competencies needed. Sorry. Guess that's one of the challenges of trying to record outside, which I thought would be something different. Okay. This article looked at the saliency of in-home counseling for poverty-stricken young children. It further explored the necessary competencies needed by counselors who would provide such services. The results yielded exactly 5 categories of competencies pertinent to effective in-home counseling with any population, but specifically with poverty-stricken children. This information is useful for the counseling profession because it outlines the 5 categories for in-home counseling competency as necessary knowledge sets, case conceptualization, counseling behaviors, flexibility in session, and professional disposition and behaviors. And we'll define each of these at a later time. None of these ideas seem to be novel in any way. This modality seems to be rooted in and sustained by basic counseling skills with an emphasis on rapport building, all of which are the cornerstone of any good counseling relationship. This modality also strongly emphasized cultural competence, which is directly aligned with the totality of our textbook to include Chapter 25, Counseling and Poverty. The article speaks a lot about white privilege and the importance of understanding it in context to the clients you will serve. It also outlines socioeconomic privilege because, undoubtedly, these are poor individuals who will be living at or below the poverty level. Cultural sensitivity is key here. A great example given in the article for this was the white counselor who went to a family's home and they did not have furniture. The home was filthy, as described in the article, and there was garbage in a bag that was sitting in the living room that apparently was supposed to be taken out but was forgotten. The counselor describes how she came in, humbly sat on the floor next to the bag of garbage, and commenced her family session. Her reason for doing this was that she felt that she could not come into someone's home and think herself better than they. If this were where they sat, on the floor, then for the little time she spends with them, she will be a part of their tradition or lifestyle, within appropriate ethical boundaries, of course. I thought this story and example really poignant and touching. As I've previously mentioned, I have been a bit of a socioeconomic snob when I have no reason to be. For that reason, and others, I have cringed at the thought of ever having to do in-home counseling. Therefore, I wanted to know more about this area, this population, and the counselors who are brave and humble enough to do it. The counselors in the study were all young white females who have been providing in-home counseling for 8 years collectively. The authors of this article are quite sensitive to cultural and gender differences, and it's also one of their necessary tenets for being an effective in-home counselor, especially for the poverty population. The interventions specific to this topic are as follows. Necessary knowledge sets. It's described as types of foundational knowledge necessary for competent practice. Example being cultural competence. Understanding what it means to be white in a community highly segregated by race and ethnicity. Another example they gave was early childhood development. It really stressed that you need to know about childhood development and be well versed in it when working with children and families, especially in in-home counseling. Number 2, case conceptualization. It's described as the quality of counselors' conceptualization of their clients and their families, as well as the process by which the conceptualizations are formed, meaning basically being self-aware of any biases. An example given is not expecting a family member to be more involved than they are willing to be. Number 3, counseling behaviors. Described as counseling behaviors that are necessary for competent treatment in this setting. An example given is being able to assess and address basic needs within a treatment plan. Number 4, flexibility in session. Described as the ability to balance all that will go on during the session, meaning managing multiple relationships and events in the session. An example given is that one counselor was cited as successfully engaging a child in play therapy while simultaneously conversing with the mom and engaging intermittently in a discussion with a male caretaker who was not the dad. This is an example of the life of an in-home counselor, having to juggle multiple things going on that wouldn't be happening in a traditional counseling setting. And number 5, professional dispositions and attitudes, described as counselors' attitudes and personality traits that contribute to success in this setting. Example given, the tendency to have positive attributions about clients and families. This is where the no furniture story came into play. To exactly quote the counselor when she responded to the family member who asked her and said, "I'm sorry about this, can we grab you a seat?" Her reply to them was, "Nah, I'm cool with this. This is fine. You know, what's good enough for you is good enough for me." Again, I thought that was very, very, very humbling, poignant, and touching that the counselor would have this kind of an attitude and disposition, which is, again, why it's very important for us all to be aware of our biases so that our humility can show through and that we can have a better therapeutic relationship with our clients. Limitations for this study that I noticed were an overall limited scope of data collection, in that this article only focused on young children. It could have been expanded further to include children of varying ages, up to 17 or 18 years of age. It just would have been interesting to see how the results may have been different using a variety of ages. Also, it focused only on one clinical practice, using the employees from that practice, which again were all young, predominantly white females. More diversity may have yielded some different results. And lastly, the qualitative methods were used for this study, which by definition lends itself to subjective judgments by the researchers who conducted the study. If they would have tried to use quantitative, it certainly would have yielded different results that would have had, more substantial backing, and that people like numbers and that kind of thing. So, overall, to have success in counseling in poverty, especially in the in-home setting, we have to definitely be aware of our biases and work on them. Not just be aware of them, but work on them so that we can reach the humility within ourselves, so that we're not consciously nor subconsciously judging our poverty-stricken clients when we go into the home, no matter what the conditions are, because by definition, a person in poverty will likely not be living to the standard of which the counselor may or may not be accustomed to. And there may be, in fact, times when we as counselors who choose to go into the home may have to sit on the floor, may have to walk through filth, will undoubtedly have to juggle multiple things going on with people who may or may not be included in the counseling session. You're not going to be able to necessarily go into a room and shut the door and have this person-centered attending without any blockage. You may be sitting on the sofa with dad on one end of the sofa, child playing on the floor, and mom could be in the kitchen cooking, and people could be walking through. Some other implications were, of course, confidentiality, the safety of the counselor, and those were the two main points that didn't deal with poverty, but mostly dealt with our ethical considerations in thinking about if there's a dangerous situation, if there's domestic violence or child abuse going on, and you're walking into that home, could you get caught up in that? As well as the confidentiality level. You obviously are not in your office, so there are other people that may be in the home, and so based on this article, the rules say you cannot ask those people to leave their home. You have to work around them, and which may be, as I described, you're in the living room and there's a lot of people coming in and out, brothers, sisters, uncles, cousins, mom, dad, friends, and there are no limits to confidentiality in that area, except to explain to those who are around at the beginning of the session that is confidential, and that's basically all you can do. Further research definitely needs to be done on this so that counselors can feel safe in providing in-home counseling. Thank you for your time. I hope my presentation was entertaining as well as informative. I realize we have many tapes to watch, as well as other assignments to complete. And hang in there, we're almost done. Thank you.